"Get out. You don't belong here." The words cut through the aircraft cabin like a blade, but what happened next shocked everyone on board. A black woman, Dr. Angela Warren, sat in seat 12A, orange juice dripping from her once pristine white blouse, staining her professional attire and the important documents scattered across her lap. The sticky liquid pooled on the floor beneath her feet, creating a humiliating mess that every passenger could see. Standing over her with an empty plastic cup in hand was Samantha Miller, a senior flight attendant with 20 years of experience, and a smirk that revealed she felt absolutely no remorse for what had just occurred. The tension in the cabin was suffocating as other passengers turned in their seats, some pulling out phones to record what they sensed was about to become a viral moment. But Samantha wasn't finished with her power play. She let out a dismissive laugh that echoed through the quiet cabin and looked down at Dr. Warren like she was nothing more than an annoying inconvenience. "Lady, you're not speaking to anyone," she said with a condescending tone that made several passengers visibly uncomfortable. "Sit down and deal with it." What Samantha didn't know was that she had just made the biggest mistake of her entire career. If you want to see how this flight attendant's world completely crumbled in the next few minutes, and if you believe in justice, type justice and tell us where you're watching from in the comments. And if you want to see justice served in the most satisfying way possible, make sure to subscribe because this story is about to get intense. To understand the magnitude of what Samantha had just done, you need to know exactly who Dr. Agnes Warren really was. That morning had started like any other in her immaculate downtown apartment, where aviation safety certificates and commendations lined the walls like badges of honor. For 15 years, Dr. Warren had dedicated her life to making air travel safer for millions of passengers. As a veteran Federal Aviation Administration inspector, she wasn't just some random traveler Samantha could push around. Her career achievements spoke volumes about her character. Safety awards from the Department of Transportation, commendations from airline executives, and the deep respect of colleagues who knew her as the woman who prevented disasters before they happened. On her desk sat a framed photo of her family, a constant reminder of why her work mattered so much. Every inspection she conducted, every safety violation she caught, potentially saved hundreds of lives. Warren had built a reputation as tough but fair. Someone who approached every situation with calm professionalism, even when dealing with the most difficult people in the aviation industry. She never raised her voice, never lost her temper, but her thorough inspections were legendary for uncovering problems that others missed. Pilots respected her, airline executives feared her, and safety records improved wherever she worked. That particular morning, she had prepared meticulously for what should have been a routine surprise inspection of this specific airline. Her assistant had warned her about mounting complaints regarding their customer service practices, particularly toward minority passengers. But Dr. Warren approached every assignment with the same methodical preparation that had defined her career. When Dr. Warren boarded Flight 447, her trained inspector's eye immediately began cataloging every detail of the aircraft's condition and crew performance. She noticed the worn carpet near the galley, the slightly loose armrest in row 8, and most importantly, the stark difference between the two flight attendants working the cabin. Melissa Gray, a young and eager junior flight attendant, greeted every passenger with genuine warmth and professionalism. Her enthusiasm for her job was evident in every interaction, and she moved through the cabin with the kind of energy that made air travel pleasant. She was everything an airline could want in a representative. Then there was Samantha Miller, the 20-year veteran who carried herself like she owned the aircraft. Her body language screamed territorial dominance, and she watched Dr. Warren with suspicious eyes from the moment she stepped aboard. Samantha had clearly claimed this cabin as her personal kingdom, and she didn't appreciate anyone who might challenge her authority. Dr. Warren settled into her assigned seat and discreetly pulled out her inspection materials, beginning the subtle observation process that had made her so effective at her job. When she politely requested a glass of water to take her medication, a completely reasonable request from any passenger, the response she received was shocking. "We don't serve drinks until after takeoff," Samantha snapped with an attitude that immediately drew attention from nearby passengers. The hostility in her voice was unmistakable, especially since other passengers around the cabin were already enjoying their pre-flight beverages. The discrimination was blatant and impossible to ignore. Dr. Warren patiently explained that she needed the water for medication, maintaining the same calm professionalism that had served her throughout her career. But instead of showing basic human decency, Samantha's rudeness escalated dramatically. She began making a scene deliberately, her voice rising as she treated Dr. Warren like she was some kind of problem passenger who didn't deserve basic respect. If you're enjoying this story of justice and want to see how Dr. Warren's calm professionalism ultimately destroyed Samantha's career, make sure you hit that subscribe button, because the confrontation is about to get much more intense. Melissa watched the entire interaction unfold with visible discomfort, clearly embarrassed by her colleague's behavior but unsure how to intervene. The young flight attendant's distress was obvious to anyone paying attention, and it was clear she knew something terrible was about to happen. What none of them realized was that Dr. Warren was mentally documenting every single detail of this discriminatory treatment, building a case that would soon bring down not just Samantha, but potentially the entire airline's leadership. But first, she had to endure an even more humiliating assault that would test her legendary self-control. Let me ask you this: if you were a passenger witnessing this obvious discrimination, would you speak up or stay silent? Share your thoughts in the comments, because what happened next will make you question everything about bystander responsibility. What happened next would forever change how Dr. Warren viewed the depths of human cruelty disguised as customer service. Samantha returned from the galley carrying a plastic cup, but instead of the clear water Dr. Warren had politely requested, the cup contained bright orange juice that seemed to glow under the cabin lights like a weapon of humiliation. Dr. Warren looked up with the same patient professionalism she had maintained throughout this ordeal and made a simple, polite correction. "I asked for water, please." Her voice remained calm, giving Samantha every opportunity to correct what could have been an honest mistake. But Samantha's response revealed the calculated malice behind her actions. She offered a fake apology that dripped with insincerity, claiming it was just a mix-up, while other passengers watched the interaction with growing discomfort. The theatrical nature of her response made it clear this was no accident, and several passengers began pulling out their phones, sensing something terrible was about to unfold. What happened next was so deliberately cruel that even seasoned travelers would struggle to believe it. As Samantha leaned forward to supposedly hand Dr. Warren the cup, she executed what appeared to be a clumsy stumble. But Melissa, standing just a few feet away, caught something that would later prove crucial. The calculated precision of Samantha's movements as she deliberately angled the cup to ensure maximum damage. The orange juice cascaded across Dr. Warren's pristine white blouse, soaking through to her skin and destroying the important inspection documents spread across her lap. The sticky liquid splattered across her briefcase, her notebook, and even dripped onto the floor, creating a humiliating spectacle that every passenger in the surrounding rows could witness. Samantha's reaction was pure theater. She let out an exaggerated gasp and placed her hand over her heart in mock surprise. "Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. How clumsy of me." Her words rang hollow through the cabin, and the smirk that flickered across her face for just a split second revealed the satisfaction she felt at her successful assault. The passengers' reactions split the cabin into two distinct camps. Some immediately began filming, recognizing they were witnessing something that would likely go viral, while others shifted uncomfortably in their seats, clearly disturbed by what they had just witnessed but uncertain whether they should intervene. Dr. Warren's response demonstrated exactly why she had earned such respect throughout her 15-year career. Despite the humiliation, despite the obvious discrimination, despite the deliberate assault on her dignity, she maintained her composure with almost superhuman control. She calmly requested napkins and asked to speak with the captain, treating this like the serious incident it clearly was. But Samantha wasn't finished with her power trip. She dismissed Dr. Warren's reasonable requests with casual cruelty, declaring that accidents happen and claiming the captain was busy with real emergencies. The implication was clear. Dr. Warren's dignity wasn't worth the captain's time, and she should simply accept this humiliating treatment without complaint. It was Melissa who finally showed some humanity in this nightmare scenario. The young flight attendant stepped forward with napkins, whispering a sincere apology for her colleague's behavior. Her distress was genuine, and her willingness to help despite Samantha's threatening glares showed the kind of courage that would soon prove crucial. The tension in the cabin became suffocating as Dr. Warren methodically cleaned herself, each deliberate movement building toward a confrontation that would expose years of systemic discrimination and abuse. The moment that would haunt Samantha for the rest of her life began with Dr. Warren's calm, measured voice cutting through the cabin's tense silence. "I need to speak to Captain Malcolm immediately." There was something different in her tone now, a quiet authority that made several passengers lean forward in their seats. Samantha, still high on her perceived victory, responded with the kind of condescending arrogance that had clearly served her well over 20 years of bullying passengers who couldn't fight back. She rolled her eyes dramatically and announced to the cabin that she was dealing with another difficult passenger who couldn't accept that accidents happen. But Dr. Warren had reached her limit. Without breaking eye contact, she reached into her briefcase with deliberate precision and pulled out the small leather wallet that would destroy Samantha's world. She flipped it open, revealing the gleaming Federal Aviation Administration inspector credentials that caught the overhead lights and sent a visible shock through everyone who could see them. If you want to witness the most satisfying moment of karma in aviation history, smash that subscribe button because what happens next will give you chills. Samantha's face underwent a transformation that several passengers would later describe as watching someone's soul leave their body. The color drained from her cheeks so rapidly that she appeared to physically shrink before everyone's eyes. Her confident posture crumbled as she began stuttering, desperate attempts at backpedaling, suddenly realizing that her victim held the power to end her career with a single report. Dr. Warren's voice remained professionally calm, but her words carried the weight of federal authority. "This aircraft is now under federal investigation." The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by the sound of passengers shifting in their seats and the quiet hum of the aircraft's systems. Captain Malcolm arrived at the scene completely confused about what emergency could require his immediate attention. He expected to find a medical situation or mechanical problem, not a flight attendant who looked like she was about to faint and a passenger holding federal credentials. Samantha's desperation reached pathetic levels as she began spinning elaborate lies about a complete accident and claiming Dr. Warren was being unreasonable about normal turbulence mishaps. Her voice cracked with panic as she realized her 20-year career was slipping away with every word. But Dr. Warren's methodical recounting of the discrimination and deliberate assault was devastating in its precision. She detailed every microaggression, every hostile response, every calculated moment of the orange juice attack with the kind of thoroughness that had made her legendary among FAA investigators. Captain Malcolm's growing concern was visible to everyone watching as he began to understand the severity of what had occurred under his command. His airline faced federal investigation, potential massive fines, and a discrimination lawsuit that could destroy their reputation forever. Samantha's increasingly frantic denials and excuses only made her situation worse, each desperate lie digging her grave deeper, while passengers recorded every moment of her downfall. What do you think should happen to flight attendants who deliberately discriminate against passengers? Let me know in the comments, because the consequences Samantha faced were more severe than anyone could have imagined. What happened next would test every passenger's moral compass and reveal the true character of everyone on board Flight 447. Captain Malcolm began systematically questioning witnesses, hoping to get a clear picture of what had actually occurred. But what he discovered was a troubling pattern of willful blindness that had allowed discrimination to flourish unchecked for years. Most passengers suddenly claimed they didn't see clearly what had happened, despite being just feet away from the incident. They mumbled vague responses about being distracted by their phones or looking out the window, desperate to avoid getting involved in what was clearly becoming a serious federal investigation. Their cowardice was palpable, and it became obvious why flight attendants like Samantha had been able to abuse passengers for so long without consequences. But all eyes turned to Melissa, the young flight attendant who had witnessed everything, and now faced the most important decision of her career. The internal struggle was written across her face as she stood between her future in aviation and her moral obligation to tell the truth. She could feel the weight of everyone's expectations pressing down on her shoulders. Samantha's desperation reached a new level as she began shooting threatening glares at Melissa. Her eyes filled with warning and fury. She mouthed, "Keep quiet," with such venom that several passengers noticed the intimidation attempt. 20 years of bullying and manipulation had taught Samantha that fear could silence witnesses, and she was using every psychological weapon in her arsenal. Captain Malcolm recognized the dynamics at play and asked Melissa the question that would determine the fate of everyone involved. Was this accident deliberate? The silence that followed was suffocating as an entire cabin full of people waited for her response. What happened next restored faith in human decency. Melissa took a deep breath, looked directly at Samantha's furious face, and spoke the truth that would change everything. She aimed directly at Dr. Warren. "I saw her position the cup." Her voice was steady despite the career suicide she believed she was committing, but her courage had just saved countless future passengers from similar abuse. Samantha's response was explosive and revealed exactly who she really was underneath her professional facade. She launched into a vicious personal attack on Melissa's credibility, calling her inexperienced, jealous, and unreliable. Her desperation transformed her into something ugly and vindictive, as she realized her 20-year career was crumbling because of one honest witness. But Melissa's bravery had created a domino effect that Samantha couldn't stop. Other passengers, inspired by the young flight attendant's courage, began coming forward with additional instances of discrimination they had witnessed. They described Samantha's pattern of hostile behavior toward minority passengers, her deliberate delays in service, and her history of accidents that seemed to target specific demographics. Dr. Warren had heard enough. Using the full authority of her federal position, she made the declaration that would ground Flight 447 indefinitely. "This plane doesn't move until the investigation concludes." Her words carried the weight of federal law, and everyone on board realized they were now part of a criminal investigation. Samantha's breakdown was complete and devastating to witness. As the magnitude of consequences became clear, she began sobbing uncontrollably. Finally understanding that her career, her reputation, and her entire future had been destroyed by her own cruelty. The woman who had terrorized passengers for years was reduced to a quivering mess, begging for mercy she had never shown others. Captain Malcolm made the decision that would define his leadership legacy. He threw his full support behind Dr. Warren's authority and ordered complete cooperation with the federal investigation, making it clear that his airline would not tolerate discrimination under any circumstances. The investigation that followed would expose a web of discrimination and cover-ups that shocked even seasoned federal investigators. Within hours, Dr. Warren's team had uncovered Samantha's extensive history of complaints that painted a disturbing picture of systematic abuse. Multiple passengers had filed reports over the years detailing her hostile behavior, deliberate service delays, and suspicious accidents that seemed to target minority travelers exclusively. The personnel files revealed the most damning evidence of all: previous incidents that had been deliberately swept under the rug by airline management, more concerned with avoiding lawsuits than protecting passengers. Complaints had been buried, witnesses had been ignored, and Samantha had been allowed to continue her reign of terror because executives prioritized profits over human dignity. Melissa's testimony became the cornerstone of the case, as she provided detailed accounts of Samantha's regular mistreatment of minority passengers. She described a pattern of behavior that included deliberately ignoring service requests, making racist comments to other crew members, and creating hostile environments designed to make certain passengers feel unwelcome on every flight. The airline's response was swift and panicked as they realized the federal investigation was expanding beyond one incident to examine their entire corporate culture. Executives who had previously protected Samantha suddenly distanced themselves, throwing her under the bus to save their own careers and avoid massive federal penalties. Samantha's immediate termination was just the beginning of her downfall. Her flight attendant certification was permanently revoked, and she was blacklisted from working in aviation ever again. The woman who had spent 20 years abusing her position of power found herself unemployable in the industry she had once dominated through fear and intimidation. Dr. Warren's comprehensive report triggered sweeping policy changes throughout the airline industry. New training programs were implemented, discrimination reporting systems were strengthened, and zero-tolerance policies were established with real consequences for violations. Her investigation had created systemic change that would protect millions of future passengers. Melissa's reward for her courage was a promotion to senior flight attendant, proving that integrity and moral courage still mattered in an industry that had too often rewarded those who looked the other way. Her career flourished as airlines recognized the value of employees who would stand up for what's right. The final chapter of this story provided the ultimate satisfaction for anyone who believed in justice. Months later, Samantha could be found working at an airport newsstand, watching the planes taxi past the terminal, aircraft she would never be allowed to serve on again. Her 20-year career had been reduced to selling magazines and snacks to travelers heading to destinations she could no longer reach. Dr. Warren's vindication came every time she boarded a flight and was greeted with genuine respect from crew members who understood exactly who she was and what she represented. Her reputation as a champion of passenger rights had only grown stronger, and her presence on any aircraft served as a reminder that discrimination would never be tolerated. If this story of justice and courage inspired you, make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell, because we bring you real stories of people who refused to be victims and fought back against discrimination. Your support helps us share these important messages with more people who need to hear them. This story proves that standing up to discrimination requires courage, but it also shows that justice is possible when good people refuse to stay silent. Dr. Warren's calm professionalism defeated Samantha's 20 years of bullying. Melissa's honesty exposed a culture of cover-ups, and together they created changes that will protect countless future passengers from similar abuse. The power to fight discrimination exists within each of us, but it only works when we choose courage over comfort and truth over convenience. What would you have done if you were a passenger on that flight? Share your thoughts in the comments below, because your voice matters in the fight for dignity and justice.